From the streets of LA, my next guest has been stabbed and shot on different occasions. Statistically, he was not supposed to make it. But with resilience, determination, this man had changed the course of his life. He is now an entrepreneur with several endeavors and a multimillionaire. His story right after this. What is mindset? Our mindset is based on what we believe, and anything we believe in, we put into motion. I have spent my life putting the mindset of perseverance into motion, and now I am here today to share my journey along with others whose mindsets have changed the course of their lives. Hi, I'm mindset coach Lorraine Lindsey, and I believe that if you can change your mind, you have the power to change your life. So are you ready? Welcome back to another episode of the Lorraine Lindsey Podcast. We are all about mindset here. We believe that if you can change your mind, you have the power to change your life. And today, we're going to be talking to a gentleman that has done just that. But before we get into his story, do not forget to hit the subscription button. Give us a thumbs up, give us your comments, and let us know what you like and don't like about the show. I love hearing from you, and I do appreciate the continued support. But do not forget to subscribe. So I want to get right into this show because I'm super excited to be speaking with this guest. When I first met him, I was completely inspired, not only by his street cred and the way he grew up and that swag that he had, but how he motivates and moves people, not just by people watching and seeing what he's doing, but he leads by demonstration. And so I want to introduce this next guest. I'm so grateful to have you here.
Miss Lorraine, happy to be here.
Thank you,
It's
Chuck.
been a long time coming.
Yeah, it has been, right? Well, you're a busy man. It's hard to lock you down, you know? So before we get into the show and I ask you the questions, you tell your story, let me do a little intro for those who do not know Chuck. So a little bit about Chuck. Meet Chuck Highsmith. He is a resilient entrepreneur whose extraordinary journey from a challenging upbringing in a turbulent neighborhood to thriving to diverse investment showcases unwavering determination and resilience. Now splitting his time between Dubai and Las Vegas, Chuck's path includes conquering adversity, achieving success in real estate, and venturing into the profitable realm of music royalties. Facing life-threatening situations, including gunshot wounds and stabbings, Chuck emerged stronger, amassing a substantial real estate portfolio in Las Vegas. His strategic foray into music royalties during the COVID-19 pandemic, acquiring rights from the artists like Chris Brown and Usher, proved immensely profitable. Chuck's expertise in music royalties, acquired primarily from producers, adds a captivating dimension to his journey. He emphasizes investing in timeless music, capable of generating consistent income. Managing royalties through his company, Edward Anderson Capital, Chuck also delves into empowering others through education. His upcoming courses, Rich Off Royalties and the Millionaire's Hustler's Guide to Multifamily Real Estate, offers insights into music royalties and real estate investments. Chuck Highsmith's story inspires aspiring entrepreneurs and investors. His forthcoming courses provide invaluable insight for financial independence. As he expands his footprint in Dubai, Chuck epitomizes the belief that success knows no boundaries.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Thank you.
So I want to get right into it. I have all these questions I have set up for you because I think that your story and everything that you've shared in the few times that you and I have gotten to sit down, I always feel like I get all these nuggets from you every time we talk. Right. But you have an incredible story, and I'm hoping, and the intention here is that people are watching that come from that kind of background, know that that's just not it. And you and I relate to a lot of that. I mean, I grew up in the streets. I mean, I had a friend of mine that was murdered, and there was a lot of violence going up in my home, and I wasn't statistically supposed to make it. And so people like you are like anomalies to most people. So let's just go right into it. Can you share some moments from your challenging upbringing and how they shaped your mindset and your determination?
Yeah, I think as far back as I can think, what contributed the most to me getting out and hustling and getting to it was the passing of my father. So he died when I was very young, 13, and it wasn't street related. He died of health complication. But having that, and then just having my mother and knowing that I had to take care of the family, you know, we had mortgage payments. Those weren't going to stop. You know, my dad wasn't around, but, you know, we still had to pay the bills. So it was either jump on the Nintendo or head to the streets. And I picked the streets. I couldn't work any other way.
It's interesting, you know, because when I think about people in the streets, right, especially when they hustle and the hustle makes money, if they already have a business mindset, they're just on the other side of it. So what was it for you going on the streets? Obviously, you had a compelling why. It was like, look, I got to take care of my family. I got to take care of my mom. You're the man now.
Yeah.
Were you the oldest in your family as far as the kids?
The only one in my family.
Oh, so you're only child.
Yeah. The buck stopped there.
Okay.
So I had to.
So what was that like for you? I mean, you're 13 years old. I mean, it's such an impressionable age for a young man. Yeah. And then to feel like, well, I have this, my dad's gone. I have to do this thing.
Well, I had other mentors.
Okay.
And they were all in the streets. Basically. So that's who I ran to at the end of the day. That was all I knew. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it was the easiest way for me to put money in my pocket and then go take care of my family.
So how long did you go? How long did that last for you? And what was that like switch?
So by the time I turned 18, I'd already been shot at.
Okay.
Yeah, between 13 and 18. So at one point I was selling a lot to like Jamaicans, all the Haitians in LA.
My people, my Jamaican people.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I was dealing a lot with Latinos in East LA and stuff like that. So it was very deep. I wasn't like, you know, I wasn't selling nicks.
It wasn't like surface stuff.
No, I wasn't going to elementary school selling nicks and dime bags. I was dealing with very high level hustlers. Yeah.
I was going to ask you how'd you get into that, but I don't want to ask that question. But my question is, how do you get out of that? Because I know a lot of people that grew up in the streets, right? Yeah. And the thing is, the money is fast and it's good, and I mean, it's a lot of money. Yeah. And to be able to walk away from that, plus your ties and the way you get connected and intertwined in that world, how was it that you were able to, and maybe I'm jumping ahead here a little bit, but what was it for you that was like, all right, I'm making this money, but I gotta switch it up?
Yeah, so at a certain point in time, for me, it was very important to make investments and other decisions that would get me out of the streets.
Okay.
You know, after you get shot, you feel like, okay, this can only happen
so many times
before that's it.
Right.
And then the same thing when I got stabbed, I actually got stabbed by somebody I knew.
Wow.
And that changed my mindset drastically. You know, it showed me not to trust people as easily. And the same thing actually carries on into business nowadays, because somebody in business will stab you in the back quicker than somebody in the street. Because they have to deal with court, and that's not really scary to most people.
Right.
But when you have to deal with the consequences of living or dying, that's very scary.
Yeah.
That's why most people in the street, they have a code of honor, they have ethics. They say what they mean what they say. You know, it's only a small percentage that you call them, they're like jack boys. They'll go out and try to rob people and do stupid stuff, but those people get dealt with very quickly.
Man, it's like a whole different world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How old were you when that happened? When you got stabbed by someone you knew?
So the stabbing was about 8 years ago.
Okay. So it wasn't that long. Okay, it wasn't that long ago. It wasn't like you was like 16, 17 years old.
No, I got shot when I was 17 years old.
Wow. So is that when everything changed for you? 8 years ago, like really changed for you?
That's when it really changed, yeah.
Right.
Because, you know, and I got a son that's 17.
You do?
So yeah, when I had him, I think that was 2006, that's when I started looking at things a lot differently, because I wanted to provide something for him that I never had growing up.
And in a safer way.
In a safer way.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people now. Actually, it's a lot of young men now that are going in a path and trajectory where they will never be able to care for other people.
And why do you say that? That's interesting.
Because I grew up a lot differently, and just seeing kind of what's out there right now. So a lot of men, like, I actually challenge them to look at their future and say, hey, man, you should become the person that you want your son to take direction from. Like, you're going to have to raise a kid eventually. And look at what you're doing now and the trajectory of your future. Is that going to be possible?
It's interesting you say that, because I remember one time you and I were out, and it was a group of people, what have you, and there was these young men. One of them actually happens to be in the studio today. And it just the way they kind of looked up to you, and there was this admiration for you, right? And then the things that you were saying, you just had this, not this arrogant, cocky thing that you would expect from somebody like yourself. Yeah. It was more this like humble, but just there was this sincerity and this care about you. And I guess my question then is like, where do you get that from? And why do you even do that? Because it's not really something you really have to do at this point in your life. But why do you? And then we're going to tap into these programs you're talking about. But why? Why is that the way you are? Because you're very deep and very philosophical and Very mindful, it seems.
Right. It's comes from a lot of what I didn't have. I needed direction. And I felt like having the right direction would have saved me from a lot of heartaches. Because, like you said in the intro, I'm not supposed to be here.
Right.
And so if I had somebody kind of give me the right direction and put me on game, then, a lot of the things I feel like I got into and the people I was dealing with at the time, I would have missed that. And,
But in some kind of way, do you feel like it shaped and formed you too?
Oh, definitely. Absolutely.
Because I feel like that sometimes for myself. Like sometimes, even though it was hard growing up and there was a lot of street around me, because we were poor. When you're poor, you live in those environments. It's just part of it.
You work with what you got.
But being able to be resilient and come out of that, I almost look at that part of my life as like a necessary evil, if you will, because it really threaded me a different way than most people that I'm around.
Right.
Do you feel that for yourself?
Absolutely. I always say that the wounds of your past are tattoos and reminders of what you had to go through. So you never quite forget it. They're learning lessons.
Right.
And so, even though you have these wounds, that the wounds will never heal, but you replace them with a lot more positive. So if you can take the negative and replace it with the positive, then you have a situation where you're advancing and moving forward, and then you use your war wounds as fuel and ammo. It's a reminder of what you've been through.
How do you do it though without it keeping you angry or reserved or guarded? Because people who've been through stuff in their life, sometimes it keeps them stuck and they don't move from that space. So how did you do that?
You have to remember that you can't change the past. What's happened has happened. And so if you have to use the past to build your future. And so if you're stuck on stupid, you're not going to ever make the decisions that are necessary to create a better life for yourself.
And it's knowing that you're stuck on stupid.
No,
I know a lot of stuck on stupid that are not aware of it.
Yeah, a lot of people get into this. That's my lawyer.
That's okay.
A lot of people.
Lawyers calling.
A lot of people get into this depressive mind state where they just can't make any decisions. They can't do anything. And at the end of the day, obviously, you're going to stunt your growth. You're not going to get out and do the things that are necessary. And I actually, I believe that, some people will say depression is like a disease. It's a state of mind. So what I believe can combat that is just doing, taking aggressive action, changing your emotions, changing how you feel. Because if you just sit there feeling the same way, you just feel sorry for yourself, right?
Right.
You're not going to take the steps necessary to change
I talk about it all the time. People think I'm so harsh for saying that, but I'm like, when you are sad every day and feeling down, it's literally you're in a state of pity, right? You're pitying yourself, and it's like that's not going to move you.
No,
it's
a frame of mind.
I read this thing recently where it said sadness equals a need for growth. That if you are feeling sad and down, it's because you need to grow.
Correct.
Just like anxiety is a lack of prioritization. If you're feeling anxious about things, it's because you don't have the priority. You got to get things in order and say this right now, right here, not everything at once. So let me ask you another question. So what inspired you and motivated you to transition from your challenging background to becoming a thriving entrepreneur? I know we kind of tapped into it, but what was that? Obviously, you said 8 years ago, there was this thing that happened.
Yeah.
What was it about that? Because obviously you had been shot. That didn't do it for you.
No.
Years prior.
No,
so what was it? I mean, I know you had your son and then this thing happened. Was it just that, or was there a combination of things?
No, it was a combination of things. Yeah, so it was, I had access to different resources. And I had people that weren't in the streets that were rooting for me. So that, so when you go out and you go build stuff, a lot of people think you need money to get started.
That's true.
You need assets and you need resources, and that's not always money. At the time, it could be the form of a mentor. It could be somebody else who's a business partner that has the resources, and that, or you could have the money. Now you just need the right people to partner with to give you the right direction to go.
And how do you get in proximity? Because if I'm coming from the streets and that's my life and that's what I'm about, that kind of comes out of my pores, right? People know that when they're around you. There's even people that would be those people to transition you out, so to speak, that would be intimidated to even be in your space. So how does someone that is in that position find those resources? How do they get it where they're open to...
Your proximity, like you said,
how do you get into the proximity, I guess is my question.
It's very important, right? When your identity is the people you surround yourself with, right? So coming from the streets, if all you do is hang out with street people, then, all you have is street opportunities.
Right.
And you go involve yourself into mentorship programs or mindset programs, and now you're surrounded by business people, and now your opportunities are what's the flavor of business that day. But at that point, for me, I had the funds I could invest, so it was pay to play. So I paid, and I got access based on that. But I had to be on my best behavior too. I couldn't come in as a street guy, and I had to leave that, check my ego at the door. Because if I want to start something new, then I can't believe that I have all the answers. I was shot and stabbed. I obviously don't have all the answers.
Right.
So if I wanted something different for myself, I had to act differently.
It's interesting because I talked about this a few episodes ago where we were talking about mentorship, and I was sharing with the guests on the show, like, if you don't have an openness to receive that mentorship, like there's always somebody in your life, no matter what you're going through, that is there that wants better for you. Yeah. Right? Whether it's an elder that just has been there, done that, or a teacher or a coach or just somebody, there's always someone. Right. But it's about checking in with yourself and saying, okay, obviously life is not going, maybe it's good here money-wise, but I got to look over my back. I always got to turn over and look over my shoulder for this money or my life or my kids or whatever the case may be. But what was it for you where you were actually finally open to receive and to be open to it? I mean, like, where you're like, okay, I got to listen here. Like, what was that?
So no, having my kid definitely, but then also having to be accountable to myself. So like looking at myself in the mirror every evening and taking away the layers, right? Because in the street, you have a level of success, and you can let that get to you. So I'm very successful at what I do. I'm able to take care of other people, pay the bills. I got nice cars, nice place to live. But that really doesn't define success. Is you have to look in the mirror and be happy with the person looking back. And at that point in time, I wasn't.
You wasn't.
I wasn't. No. So the best accountability you could have is accountability you could have for yourself.
Absolutely.
Because if you're in a group situation, I'll do everything I can to please the next person and make sure that I don't let that person down. So if I tell a business partner of mine or a friend of mine, hey, I'm going to show up, I'll be there for you, I'm going to do this or that, then I'll 100% try to do it. Where we lack accountability most of the time is within ourselves. Right. You look in the mirror, you tell yourself you're going to do something. You could slack. You think nobody else is going to know. But then, when you're really accountable, it's really important that you take care of yourself first.
Showing up for yourself like you do for others. Yeah.
Because that's the only way you can really take care of other people in a capacity that really serves them.
Yeah. And also sounds integral too. Like there's a lot of integrity with that. Right. Like when you're saying, if a person depends on me to show up, I'm going to show up. That's integrity. That's a work ethic no matter where you're at, right? Yeah. All right, so I got another question for you. So what strategies, now we're going to switch over to your real estate because at some point you started investing into real estate, right?
Yep.
What, and I've read some of your bios and articles and you got a lot of publications out there, but one of the things that you say is that you feel like real estate was kind of like that thing to build wealth. What was that understanding that you had with that, or where did you learn that from, and what was your first kind of real estate endeavor that got you building this portfolio of yours?
Yeah.
I know those are loaded questions.
It was actually reading a book. So I do a lot of reading, a lot of self-growth.
See, I love that. What was the book? But do you remember?
So the book is actually Your First Million in Multifamily Real Estate.
Okay.
And then, obviously going back to the Kiyosaki books and stuff like that. Those are great.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad, yeah.
Yeah, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But I got into multifamily real estate only after buying like single family and condo units and stuff like that. But those for me were a single point of failure. So
really?
Yeah. And then, I'm coming from like a distribution background. So I always think on a bigger scale, right? So I'm like, okay, well, now how do I leverage what I have and get into multi-unit real estate?
Because that's the key, right? Understanding leverage.
Yeah. So I had a bunch of condos that I bought right by Nellis Air Force Base.
Okay.
And they were like kind of dilapidated, old. I think I paid $50,000 a piece for them.
What made you have the balls to do it though? Because I think sometimes I know a lot of people who talk about investing, right? Yeah. But they never really pull the trigger. They'll read and they'll get information and they're getting ready to get ready, but they never pull the trigger. So what was it for you that was like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna pull the trigger, especially when they're in terrible condition?
Having other people to be accountable to.
Okay.
Just knowing that if I go to jail or if my life ends today, am I going to have passive income to continue to take care of people? And that's when you actually talk about a legacy. not too many people in the streets leave a legacy unless they've done something super huge, right? You got a lot of legends that movies are made about, but that's the 1%.
Right.
You don't see in real life. You have 5 years if you're in the streets before you're either in jail or dead if you're not working the right way. So if you take, like, let's say you go make all this money in the street and you divide it over a 5-year period, it doesn't add up to nothing.
Right.
Like you got to make a certain amount and then reinvest it. That's the only reason that I have the longevity I have, is because I went into legitimate businesses.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first multi-unit building I bought was a 20-unit apartment building here in Las Vegas, like down the street. I actually owned the building next door too.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Man, like, there's so many questions I have just for myself personally, because that's like, it's interesting because we talk about mindset or whatever. For example, me having the mindset for money, okay? Growing up where that was just not a thing. There was no money growing up. It was just all poverty. And what I did understand was that, like, my compelling why was my son being a young mother and saying, okay, my son cannot have the same life that I have. Like he cannot not ever have a car or be on a bus or walking, and just the way things were, right? And so I was very hungry to make money for him.
Yeah.
But I didn't understand money because I didn't have that kind of relationship with money. And so making investments, and I mean, it was a lot of trial and error.
Right.
So I'm saying all that to say, for you, what would you say to people who are listening that are about this life or about this lifestyle, and they really want longevity, they want to create legacy and generational wealth?
Absolutely.
What's the first step? I know you said resources and being around people, but what's the first step?
If you're still in the street, I think you got to think about your family and the longevity of the people that you have to take care of, and you have to have a certain mindset, and in order to do that, you have to grow what you know. Like you can, like. What's that old saying, right? Yesterday's keys don't open today's doors.
Yeah, very true.
Or the future. So you need a different tool belt. You know, you're not gonna build a brand new you with the same set of tools that you had 5 years ago. And the way I operate, I have a 5-year program for myself. Every 5 years, I like to be, a better version of myself.
Which I love that. I think that's important.
And that's the only way you can gauge growth. Really.
Yeah.
So you're striving. So if you 2-3 years down the line, if you're in the same space, same position that you were 2 years back, you're not focused on your long-term growth. So just for me, I have a lot of short-term goals. I have midterm goals, and then I have the long-term, 5-year plus goals that are very important. And then you also mentioned, like having a kid and making sure that they're not. They don't see the street side of things.
Right.
My kid is the furthest from street.
Yeah.
He wouldn't survive one day in the corner of the street anywhere in Las Vegas. I'd have PD knocking on my door saying, "Hey, I found
and
this
you're over
kid."
there patting yourself on your back. You're like, "Good job, good job."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting you said, because I'm going to circle back to what I was saying about the money thing. Even when money was coming,
right,
I didn't have a mindset or a relationship with money to feel that I deserved it.
Yeah.
So as quickly as it was coming in, it was as quickly as I was burning it at one point in my life.
Yeah.
And because the streets don't teach you about longevity, it only teaches you that to have things and acquire things makes you somewhat important. It gives you a false sense of importance, right? But yet, if you don't keep it going, you just lose it all because you don't have that kind of relationship.
You don't have that relationship with yourself or a sense of self-worth.
Right.
So that you'll never be able to out-earn your identity.
That's good.
So whatever identity you have, whatever you're making at that point in time, that's as soon as it's like a temperature, right? When you have a certain temperature that you're used to operating at, if you go beyond that, it gets uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Then you bring yourself back down. You can get beyond that temperature, and you'll continually bring yourself back down. Some people do that in the form of self-sabotage. They'll get to a certain point of success, or they'll have access to money, and they'll go fuck off all the money because, hey, I don't deserve this shit. I didn't work for it. I didn't grow for it. So you have to have that growth. Your mindset has to be what you want for yourself in the future. So like whatever income I need my mindset to match that income. Otherwise, I'm never going to accept it.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did you do that? How did you get into that frame of mind?
Yeah.
Because I think that's the trick. It's like the I get it now what thing, you know what I mean? I always say this to people. It's like, okay, I get it. I understand that. But my pathology, my life experiences, the people that I know I need to remove myself from, but that's like family to me. Those are my boys or my girls or whatever. How does somebody get into that frame of mind where it's tangible and it starts actually working? Because that's the hard part, actually.
Yeah. You have to acknowledge where your weaknesses are, because you know, when you understand what you're truly weak at, then you can grow. And you have to actually like take back all your layers, like remove your ego, like, you know, whatever. If you have nice shit, forget that. If you got money in the bank, forget that. Like, just as far as your mindset goes, who are you as a person? What are your core values? Where's your integrity?
The core values.
Yeah, core values. Your fundamentals are always important, because if you don't, people get lucky all the time. If you don't have fundamentals, you're not gonna be consistent.
Man, that's so true. One of the things when I coach people, for example, is the first thing I want to know is what's important to you, and in order.
Yeah.
Because everything's just like spread out everywhere.
Right.
And it's like when you understand the order of importance in your life and you become in an alignment to that, then if you pick one thing, that, let's say number 1 is this and number 4 is this, and I put number 4 first, you're going to feel out of an alignment with that.
Right.
And so really tapping in and understanding what are my core values, and then that identity thing of like, what is this thing that I want in my life, and how am I going to identify with that so I can cultivate it? You know, I always tell people, like, it's not necessary for you to change as far as the essence of who you are, because that's impossible. You are who you are. Your life experiences, your personality trait, all of that is this identity construct that has been created through your experiences. But it's like, what part of that is you? And you had said something very interesting. It's like every 5 years, I'm looking to be the better version of myself.
Right.
So from the apple seed to the sprout to the plant to the tree, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And so I don't know. I guess. Well, go ahead. No, please.
When you look at it, like some of the most successful people in the world today have gone through immense adversity.
Yeah.
They've had to fight, right? They're not like, you know, your average, like, oh, I went to school, went to college, and, you know, got a job and I'm super successful. No, there's a lot of people with, and you're talking about multimillionaires and billionaires. Actually, most of them come from a very, very beautiful struggle. And I say a beautiful struggle because it's what built them. It's what got them there. It's what allowed them to push through when they reached, you know, a barricade in their life, because they've been through worse. So if you've been through worse by yourself, and then you now are part of this corporate infrastructure, or you're now, you know, let's say it's real estate, let's say it's technology or whatever. A lot of the problems that most people would think would be problems, they're not actually problems.
Right.
They're just small bumps that require high-level solutions.
So what separates the person who gets that and makes it, and the one who doesn't? What do you think? What do you think is the difference?
Definitely the person that's worked on themselves. The person who works on themselves the most will eventually get all that is supposed to come to them. So I have people that ask me, look, I got $5K, I got $10K to invest. Where should I put the money?
Right.
Put it into yourself. Grow. Like, because that 5K or 10K is not going to get you really anywhere. Learn first. Build that education. Build that fundamental floor that you can work from, and then build on top of that. So and that's the best thing you could do. If you do have a substantial amount of money, then you need to know how to leverage that, because leverage is key to growth at that point. So now you have money. How can I use it as leverage, and how can I get access to more of it so I could do bigger things?
So let's talk about your leverage.
Okay.
It's a great segue. It was perfect.
Perfect.
So how did you then, so you get into real estate first. That's really where you started to legitimize your businesses and do all that, right? Sure. And it started with real estate. But you've diversified your portfolio quite a bit. And you're even doing endeavors in Dubai. So talk to us a little bit about the music royalties and how you stumbled across that, if it in fact was a stumble, I don't know. Yeah. And then also there was fintech, I think is what it is as well, right?
Yeah, I got involved in fintech.
So how do you because they're such different avenues.
Verticals,
that how did you get to diversifying, and what was the decision to say this is a good thing to diversify in, and this is as well for you?
Yeah. So first of all, the royalties.
Okay.
That I got into right before COVID, and I was introduced to B. Turner, which is one of Chris Brown's producers.
Okay.
And then through a platform called Royalty Exchange, and one of my lawyers, I was able to negotiate the buyout of some of Chris Brown's catalog. So, I own part of the Party with, there's a song called Party with Coochie Man, Usher. I own another song called Post to Be with Jenny Aiko and Omarion.
I love her.
Yeah. And that song that song was a viral hit. It's got 800 million views on YouTube. It's actually the highest earning piece of music that I own. But I own the performing and the streaming rights for that. So I get paid through a publishing company called BMI.
Wow.
And that's the same way that a Chris Brown would get paid or an Usher. So it goes to BMI, and then they make sure that I'm paid for it based on that.
That is so wild. Because I didn't even think that was a thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Like, so the guy's like talking to you, and it's just like a random car. You guys are having cigars or something?
You know what it is some people, they don't have like passive income.
Okay.
So when they're low on work, they're low on funds. So, the producers got the Bentleys, they got the gold chains. They live the lifestyle that the artist lives. And at some point, they need to be able to free up cash.
Gotcha.
So that's actually how I started. So I made an offer on some of the songs. We were able to negotiate the deals and then get a check cut to the producer. It's not always the case. Some producers will have like a new format or a new catalog of music coming out. So they want to purge all their old music because they're going to make royalties off of all this new stuff, right? And then as the years go by, you have attrition. Right. So you have a piece of music that makes X amount of money this year, the next year it gets lower and lower. And then the attrition is actually not that bad if you find something that's super viral, super sticky. So things that are like karaoke.
Or like the TikTok viral songs are
stuff.
Big, right?
Yeah, those always make comebacks, right? So like I'll look at my ledger of where a lot of my songs are getting played, and it'll be like Japan, Korea. Okay. Because there's a huge karaoke movement there, right? So people, so that's where, and then obviously like during COVID, I was able to get great deals on music because we had no clubs open, no entertainment facilities.
So they were selling the music like hotcakes.
They were selling it like hotcakes. So I was buying up through COVID all the way up until the end of it. And then now, with everything back to normal, you got, Chris Brown and Omarion, they're performing again. So I get performing rights off of the Millennium Tour. Chris Brown, when he'll go perform in Dubai, and I'll get royalties off of that.
That is wild.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is like you took it sounds to me anyway, that you took what you understood and learned in real estate and you just found another type of real estate in a way.
Another asset class.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. And so is that kind of what it is? It's like.
Yeah, because up until that point, I had already, like that previous year, I had already done $7 million in deal flow in just real estate transactions.
Wow.
So it was.
So that wasn't enough. You're like, I'm bored. I need to switch my,
I get bored.
I get
bored easy.
But there's no fear factor with you. It doesn't seem like. It seems like you just, because I guess my question is then how does somebody, like if I want to make investments, right, and I'm totally ignorant to it, and obviously you got to find mentors and people who will guide you without, I mean, you got to be careful with that even too.
Well,
but
in real estate, I was going up against Marcus and Millichaps,
like
Berkshire Hathaway.
Yeah.
So I would go bid on a building, a legitimate, like a big building, right? Like I'm talking about 50 units, up to 80 units. One of them was the Ogden Executive downtown, right down the street in Fremont. This was during COVID. And, it'll be a Berkshire Hathaway that is representing the property. And I'll pull up in my Rolls Royce and I'll get out.
Who's this guy?
They'll look at me and they'll be like, where did you come from? And and you just find yourself going up against the same people because when you get to the top, it's a very small world, cool. Right? They say the cream rises to the top.
Yeah.
So when you're dealing with the cream of the crop, you run into the same people. So now I got people calling me from Marcus and Millichap saying, hey, Chuck, I got this deal for you because they know that I have the funds and I have the resources to purchase it.
So it's almost like you just, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying, that analogy about the boiling water and being able to have to withstand the temperature. Because when you're talking about now that level and it being about that could be frightening for a lot of people like that. Some people don't move because that concept is way bigger than they can conceive.
Yeah, their mindset's not prepared for it.
Yeah, so how do you overcome that fear factor then?
There's two levels. So I mean, there's two different things that will keep somebody from creating action. It's that they don't have the proper education and mindset for it. Okay. Mindset is the biggest thing.
Okay.
And then the other thing is you have the crab in the barrel mentality, where you're surrounded by people that don't have the mindset that you need to have. So you'll come up with a great idea and the next person will shoot it down. Oh, no, that's impossible. But what about this idea? Nah, are you stupid?
Yeah.
No. So when you surround yourself with people who ain't shit, aren't going to do shit, will never be shit,
then that's going to be
that's going to be you.
Walks like a duck, quacks like a duck.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
So they always say, if you're the brightest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So I want to be the stupidest person in every room I'm in because I got so much that I need to learn. And the second you think you need to stop learning, that's the second you lost. Growth is for everything.
It is so powerful. So it's interesting you said because that's exactly where I'm at this stage of my life, right? This is the decision I made last year. I always, like New Year's, I always set an intention for the new year. And last year, as things were happening and my businesses were doing whatever they were doing, I said, next year I need a 10X. It's time for me to really laser focus.
Right.
And again, I'm kind of circling back to what I was saying earlier was I never had a mindset. I always made money because I had a reason to make money, but I was never laser focused on a specific amount and how to do it and really kind of cultivate it with intention. It just kind of came. And I realized I needed to switch that mindset and say, no, I need to be intentional about not embarrassed to say, this is my goal. This is the number I want to hit. This is the money I want to make kind of thing. Anyhow, so one of those things that I realized was exactly what you said, that I've been spending a lot of time being in rooms where I feel like I was the smartest person. Cool. And I don't mean that boastfully. It was a comfort zone for me and realizing this is not going to work.
Right. Well, just to add to that, a lot of people are comfortable where they are.
Yeah.
So if you want greatness, you're never going to be comfortable. So the second that things get very familiar and very comfortable, that's exactly when you need to grow.
To pivot.
So then you want to go challenge yourself and get uncomfortable again. Be around people that challenge you. And be like, I want to be around somebody that I could tell them what I did and they looked at me and said, is that it? Is that it? Like, cause I'm, like if I'm in a room and I explain everything and everybody's just, whoa, they're adding that to my ego.
Right.
I don't want people to add to my ego. I want people to make me feel like I'm not doing enough.
And that humility. So that's another thing, right? Having that humility, because right there's a trap right there, what you just said.
Right.
When people are like, I need all that reassurance constantly. Yeah. I need people to just feed me. You won't move in that space, right? You just get stuck.
Yeah.
Okay, so then how do you find the people? Because I think that's the hardest thing. Like, I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
Without being annoying, without being intrusive, without trying to be up someone's butt.
Like
how do you do it?
One of my good buddies right now is he goes by @Hustler.
Okay.
Right, and he's a phenomenon when it comes to branding and marketing. The way I got around him was by moving into the same neighborhood.
Okay.
He's literally my next door neighbor. My other next door neighbor was one of the founders of the rock group Chicago. Actually, there's a funny story behind that. That's
pretty cool.
Yeah. I went over to his house and I seen all these platinum plaques in his pool. He invited me over and we had a little wake and bake session. But I looked at the plaques and I said, "Man, where'd you buy these from?" He's like, "No, these are mine." Yeah, I co-founded Chicago.
Well, maybe you were looking for another type of way in investing.
Daniel Serapin, right? So that shout out to Daniel. But @Hustler, he he's huge in marketing, business, and all of that. So my proximity was where I lived. So sometimes it makes sense to go spend that extra money to change your zip code. It makes sense to maybe upgrade your airline ticket. Get into business class or first class, have conversations with people who are doing things differently. I don't always need to fly first class. I appreciate it because I've met some of the coolest people. Yeah, and they don't know my background, so they're not going to judge me right away.
Right.
And now my identity is so different that, I look at the person that I was, I don't judge that person. I'm just proud of them. I'm proud of where I came from.
So if you're the little guy at the bottom of the totem pole, you don't have the money to buy first class tickets, you definitely can't change your zip code, but you have greatness in you and you aspire for that greatness. What would you tell those people on how to get yourself in proximity to people like that without being like this nuisance, right?
Go to conventions. They have a lot of leadership and growth conventions, right? And that's like a $200 ticket.
Right.
Right. Maybe a VIP ticket might be $1,500. So you got to think, a lot of people have vices, right? They get a check and then they go spend it on alcohol.
Right.
Or other shit that's not going to serve them. I always tell people too, if you're not where you want to be in life and you think you can afford to learn or do better, go home. If you got, that box that you got at home that everyone calls the TV, that's a dream killer, man. Go sell that shit. take the money and go invest in yourself.
Yeah.
We all have these material things that don't serve us.
That's so true.
They don't change our mindset. So, you know, if you really are, or if you're real serious, then you'll get rid of everything. You'll do everything you got to do. Like if you got a car, sell that shit.
Yeah. You know
like,
what?
Go, you know what? Like take the money and invest in yourself.
It is the truth. Mm-hmm. It is the truth. And people, one of my favorite quotes, and I can't remember who the quote is. It might have been Maya Angelou, where she says, "If you argue your limitations, you get to keep them."
Right.
And I cannot tell you how often, and even for me, shedding a lot of people, not because I don't care about them or that I think I'm better than them, but just realizing exactly what you said. It's like this proximity is not equating to power or to growth.
A lot of people are afraid to let go of what they're comfortable
what they know,
with and what
right?
They know.
Yeah. And that unknown is very scary for a lot of people.
I was doing a lot of traveling, and I think I was in Colombia when I did this post. I posted there was a wall of Louis Vuitton luggage, and in the post I said a lot of people are buying Louis luggage, but they ain't never left their zip code. You'll go save up $5,000 to buy a Louis bag, but you can't afford to get out of Dodge.
Right. And how important is that? Because I know the answer to this for me personally. How important is it that you explore outside of your zip code and just even culturally, like traveling the world and things like that? Because you do quite a bit of traveling. Obviously, you're spending time in Dubai, which we'll get to that.
Correct.
But how important is it that we step outside of our box?
It's very important. Perspective is key. And with you have to run into people that have bigger vision than you do, right? Otherwise, you get stuck in that black tunnel. And at the end of the day, you can only see as far as your eyes can see.
Right.
So you need people that have been there and done that to drag you forward and be like, listen, it ain't all black in here. Like once you get to the edge, it's actually everything that you ever expected. But with your limited vision, you won't see that on your own. So it takes people that are mentors and leaders to be able to drag you forward and say, listen, I already got to the finish line. You're in the right direction. Just keep going. So perspective is everything. So when you're able to travel, you meet other successful people, or you meet people with a different perspective in life. It might be a different culture. You never know what you're going to identify with, and you never know what's going to trigger you to take massive action.
Right. That's so true.
Because in this world, right, we have the time. We're limited to the time we have, and when I say limited is we don't get more time. Right. Time, whatever time is there, once it's done, it's done. You don't get time back. But so what you have to do is, in order to deal with time, you have to create massive action. And so you collapse. That's how you collapse time frames. You create massive action within the time that you do have.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's how you collapse time frames.
Yeah.
With massive action.
And alternately, check this out. If you since you can't create more time, you can invest in time. So everything that I do right now is geared toward a dividend. Everything that I do now has to pay me passively, so that in the future I get my time back.
Gotcha.
I'll spend my time now so I don't have to work in the future. And that's what gives me my time back. So if 10, 15 years from now, I'm sitting on a beach, relaxing and chilling, I'm doing whatever the fuck I want because I made the investment now into the right things that pay me in time. I don't care about the money. Like, give me my freedom.
So how do you find balance with all this? Because it's like,
I don't.
In life,
I got an assistant. JC's my assistant over there. He helps me.
No, because it's, I hear it and I mean, it's very intriguing for me because it's definitely how I think and where I'm aspiring and what I'm trying to do for myself.
Right.
But I also understand that sometimes like the laser focus on this can make you lose focus over here or focus there. How do you find balance in it? And you just said you don't, but I mean, okay, I've got the money. Then what about the health, right? And then making sure my health is good. And what about my most personal relationships? I think. Do you think that is there a way to balance that out or not?
No,
really?
There's absolutely a way.
Okay.
But you got to be able to operate in chaos. Because if you get into sticky situations or if you fold when things get tough, you're not gonna make it. You know what I'm saying? There's been a lot of, like, you watch some real good boxing matches. There's been a lot of matches where the person that wins wasn't the person that started winning. Like, he was the person you thought was gonna lose. Right. And you come down to the 10th, 11th, and boom, something just hit him. And now all of a sudden he wanted it more than the other person. So you have to know, like, first of all, you got to know that you're capable. And that comes with building, your identity. that your identity will do that for you. You know, because if you don't feel like you're capable, you're going to get exactly what you deserve.
That's very true. That's very true.
Yeah.
People will meet you where you're at.
Correct. Absolutely.
So it's like whenever you are going through things, whether they're shitty relationships, bad business endeavors, people are meeting you where you're at, you know, and I truly believe, like, I love that you emphasize this need to invest in yourself.
Right.
And people think I'm hokey sometimes because I read, I study, I go to, every year I have to go to at least 3 or 4 different workshops where there's total immersion, where I'm completely releasing myself of the rest of the world.
Absolutely.
Because I'm so hardwired for the stuff that I grew up with.
And it's important
It
for you to
is.
have your own direction, because, you know, people will look at you and be like, oh, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Well, look, you don't pay my bills.
Right.
I know what I'm doing at the end of the day. And, you know, I have this other thing too. It's too many people look at athletes as their superheroes, right? So they'll go put on a jersey, they'll go cheer them on at the stadium. I challenge people to be their own superhero. Like, be that person to your children, to your wife, to your loved ones. Make sure they look up to you before they go look up to a LeBron James,
Right.
or whatever. You know, it's okay to be a fan or whatever, but if you being a fan of somebody else means that you're lacking in your own personal identity, then you need to be a fan of yourself before anything.
How does someone do that? If the world's been beating them down, right? And everybody around them, from their parents to their grandparents to whoever was around them, was like, you're not shit, you're not about nothing, you're never gonna be anything, and that's ingrained and instilled in you. How do they combat that? Because it gets so visceral, gets so inside of them, you know?
That's true. You know, a lot of people, like, I always tell people, listen, if you want to change your physiology, work out. If you want to change your mindset and your options and what you have available to you, learn a trait, like learn how to sell. Like, sales is a big trait. And then negotiation is a big trait too. So aside from mindset, having these key elements of business, like being able to sell and negotiate, that doesn't only apply to business, that applies to your own life.
Right.
Because if you, let's say you're doing something and you want to give up, now you know you can sell yourself on why not to. You know what I'm saying?
That's a good point,
At the end of the day, but you got to have these key characteristics.
You got to have the mental stamina.
You got to have the mental stamina,
Yeah.
So it's certain traits and characteristics that really successful people have. They're very disciplined. And discipline is actually one of the key reoccurring themes that you'll hear for every successful person. It was discipline. It was, you know, knowing that they're in the right situation at the right time. Direction is big. And their integrity is huge too.
Yeah.
So
I was listening to this thing recently, and it was, oh man, I literally wrote this down, and I have it literally on my computer, so I look at it every day. And it was an old gentleman. He's sitting in this chair, but he was so monochromatic the way he spoke, but it was just, he just spoke through me, because I'm in a season where I'm open to be receptive of it, right? And one of the things he said was, in life, particularly in business, you have to have discipline. You have to have laser focus.
Correct. And
you have to really tap into consequence. And he goes, and the greatest asset that we will ever have is the ability to think.
Yeah.
He goes, but the trick is to cultivate quality thinking, right? And so I was like, this is so good, because we're going to think independent of ourselves anyway. Sometimes we think we are our thoughts, but if we pay attention and become mindful, then our thinking can be quality, kind of like what you're saying. Yeah. And I love that he said this thing about consequences. Every person, you know, I was in the casino business for many, many years, and I was the one that went out there, headhunt the big, huge gamblers, the $1 million+ guys, right? And I always wanted to sit down and break bread with them, because I wanted their story. I needed to know, how did they become millionaires and billionaires? Like, how did this happen? Right. And especially the ones that had rags to riches stories. Like, how did they make it, you know? Yeah. And it was consequence. It was the biggest thing. Yeah. They put themselves in a position that they had no choice but to make it.
Correct.
The consequence was too great that they became laser focused, and they had incredible discipline, because if I don't do this, everything will fail.
Correct. Yeah.
And I thought that was really intriguing, because I'm like, you know what? It really, truly just boils down to that.
That's true. And consequence falls in line with accountability. So you're accountable because you have consequences. You know that with the decision you make, there's either a good and bad, right? And so, you know, just being able to have that provocative thinking process that allows you to make better decisions. So, and then also when you make a decision, to be extremely decisive about that. Like, hey, I'm going to do something, so I'm going to do everything that's necessary to do it. Because when you're decisive, you eliminate all other possibilities. That's it. Like, if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. So I eliminate everything else. There's no way I'm not going to do it. And so when you have that level of discipline, that level of, and then you know that there's consequences to it, then you make that decision and you're deciding. Because not making a decision is a decision too.
Absolutely.
Right?
They say that one of the greatest sins in the Bible is the inability to make a decision.
Right.
And it's not like a sin like the devil's going to get you, but it's because it keeps you stuck and riddled.
Correct.
And I can't tell, even when I left my casino career, it was a lucrative career and whatever, when I finally decided, like you said, the decision to say, I got to burn these boats and I can't keep talking about it. Right. I just got to pack the bags and burn the boats and just do it. It was more stressful not making the decision than it was when I finally pulled the trigger and just did it. Then it became, okay, now I need to figure out the next step, but the decision was made. And so you're exactly right about that. And I think that even if you're growing up in the streets and you got this street life, like you said earlier, looking yourself in the mirror and then deciding, is this what I want? Because what's the trajectory here for 5 years for me? Like, be real with yourself. Ask yourself those raw questions and make a decision for your life.
Yeah, I like what you said about just burning the boats.
The boat,
the bridge and the boats and just getting on with it. Because, you know, a lot of people like to keep this little lifeline. And hanging on to that lifeline is not going to give you that life that you're looking for.
No.
You know, because when you're on that lifeline, I mean, the only way is down. You let go of that, you're going straight into the water. So you got to, you know, if you leave everything behind, you make the decision to create a better life for yourself, make better decisions, invest in different things, do things that you normally aren't comfortable doing. Then there's a light at the end of the tunnel, right? But a lot of people are afraid to get rid of the lifeline.
And it's people not believing and trusting themselves. Because I can tell you, since we're using this metaphor to the island, you'll start off on the island and there'll be nothing there but trees, right? And then all of a sudden you'll look for something and you'll think, oh, I could use this to chop down this tree. Before you know it, you're finding twine and you're building and you learn resources. When you're on that island, you figure it out because it's survival, right?
There's no banks or money.
And it's so crazy, even for me, thinking, how am I going to make it? How am I going to make it? Well, like you said, if I hold on to that lifeline, I'm just putting my toe in the water. Well, I've always got this. I can default to this. And so you just never give it your all until you finally just say, F it, I got to do this, you know?
100%.
And for me, at least, the consequence for me that I had created to make the decision was I could stay here, make this money, and be miserable, because I realized money is a great resource, but it isn't the avenue to your joy if you're making it in a way that makes you miserable. It just doesn't equate to happiness.
Right. You
can get things and tangibles, but it doesn't create to fulfillment, you know? And so me understanding that and finally making that decision, it was like a big, the consequences is if I don't do this, I'm going to spend my life not knowing and being unhappy. And to me, I'll die that way.
Correct.
And that was the consequence for me.
You got to make that sacrifice. So when you decide, they say the price of success gets paid today in advance.
I love that.
So you got to pay the price in advance to be successful. Like, you make the decision that I'm going to be successful, then you got to figure out, okay, what does it take? I'm willing to pay that price. I'll make the decisions that are necessary. I'll make the sacrifices. None of this shit comes without sacrifice.
Right.
You're going to sacrifice a lot, time, family. You know, you're going to lose money making bad decisions, but then you'll learn to make right decisions. Failure is a byproduct of success. So people that fail and stop trying, that's infinite failure.
That's so true.
When your failure leads to your success, then you turn your failure into life lessons. That's when you actually win.
So let's speaking of that, you've got this thing that you're doing, the Millionaire Hustler's Guide to Multifamily Real Estate, and then Rich Off Royalties.
Yeah.
Why did you create these programs, and what is your goal with all of it?
Well, for both of those programs, there's nothing on the market that'll take you step by step for a person like me.
Okay.
How I started with nothing, right? So I actually will hand walk people through the entire process of going out, finding a hustle, making money.
Okay.
And then using that money to make better decisions, make the right decisions, invest into real estate, start small and then grow bigger, right? It's the idea of when you look at how an avalanche is made, it starts with a small snowball and it goes into something big. And that's, you know, it's not a negative connotation. That's actually very positive. So you start small, you develop confidence, right, in that, and then you're able to go bigger. But if you have somebody that can walk you through and make sure you have limited mistakes, that you make the right decisions up front, then you have that confidence. So you know, and that comes with a price, right? You either pay the price to know what to do now, or you're going to learn later by paying the price later.
Yeah.
And the price later is always more expensive. Your failures are always more expensive than to get in line with somebody who's been there and say, hey, just walk me through this.
Right.
I want to avoid all the failure.
God, that's so true.
Yeah.
Some people don't get that.
Yeah.
So why did you decide to do this? I mean, you're obviously very successful on your own. You're doing your own thing. Yeah. What makes you or compels you to want to now teach other people to do the things that you're doing?
I think we're going into a very unconventional period in time. I think you know, the United States our government's not keeping up with their end of the bargain, right? You know, we're supposed to be the land of the free, but if we're free in poverty, what are we? We got to be able to have people have better resources, more access to knowledge that will actually give them a fighting chance to have a good life. Not all, you know, college debt and all that. That's out. That was yesteryear. If my kid doesn't want to go to college, man, I don't care.
Right.
You'll learn. You'll learn business. You'll learn real estate. You'll learn pick up a trade and learn something. But a lot of the systems that our government put into place were meant to keep us, enslaved. That's a word. It's a controversial word. But I mean, if you think about it, slavery hasn't ended. We're a slave to the system. You know, they just give us jobs now that will pay the bills so that we could put some food on the table and get some rest so we can go back to work the next day. Right? They give us enough, and they still take our time. So my goal is to give people their time back, because I hate the fact that the average person goes and works 60, 65 years of their life, and then they only have another 10 years left to really enjoy themselves with their family. You know, if you look at how much time you spend in traffic, how much time you spend asleep, how much time you spend in a 9-to-5, and then you break that down and see how much time you got left to live, you got 8 years of life that you can deal with. If you take that pill, so I'm out here, you know, just like Andrew Tate is, man. There's a whole different world. It's a different pill that you guys need to take. People get brainwashed all the time, right? TV is brainwashing. Politics is brainwashing. I don't mind being brainwashed. Just give me the right programming. I'll go brainwash myself the right way and do the right things. But, you know, all this bullshit that we're taught and all these crutches that we carry, all the excuses that we make, I leave that shit at the door.
Yeah. It's your contribution.
Yeah.
I think that ultimately in life, when we make it, the greatest gift we can give is our gift of contribution.
100%.
You know?
Gotta leave a legacy.
Because why just leave it to self? Why not share it? You know? It's the reason why I do the podcast. It's like, I've been through a lot of shit in my life and I've learned a lot of things. So why not just put it out there? I'll be vulnerable with you and let you know, because if it's going to help somebody else, that's the goal, you know? So we are wrapping up on time. God, there's many questions I have for you. So you'll have to come back. We'll have to get into some fun, like controversial topics next time you come in.
Be cool. Maybe have a panel.
Yeah, that would be great. I would love to have you on a panel.
Sure.
But before we close, what would you say is the greatest lesson you've learned in your life thus far?
The greatest lesson that I've learned
so far in life
is to be at peace with your purpose. Find your purpose and be at peace with it, and then live your life fulfilling that purpose.
I love that.
Everything else will fall into place. You know, because we have this idea of success. Success for me may be different than it is for you or somebody else. And then I also, you know, really challenge people to just do things that'll give you some time where you can actually reflect, have more perspective, spend more time being, you know, more spiritual. Right? It's funny to end that way because, you know, my journey and how I started in life was far from spiritual.
Yeah.
But I'm in a place now where, you know, I hunt growth and I look for that spirituality. I look for peace. Yeah.
Beautiful. What is the most important thing to you now that differs from what it was back then?
I think protecting my peace.
Protecting your peace.
Like being around people that don't willingly put me in situations where my peace is compromised.
That's my mantra right now. I'm all about my peace.
I could be successful and have all this money, but if I'm in toxic environments daily, then what is that? You know, I'm not really serving my own purpose. So I like to eliminate the toxicity. And there's a lot of fake gurus out there that go preach spirituality.
Oh my God, everyone's talking about
wellness.
that. I had a friend post the other day, and he's like, these fake gurus. And I said, you ain't talking about me, because I'm, first of all, not trying to be anybody's guru.
Lorraine, yeah.
But you're right, though.
They're out there, so just be careful, because a lot of them don't practice what they preach.
I have encountered a few, actually. And yeah. Okay, so lastly, the last question I have for you, it's not really a question, but, well, yeah, it is. For those that are listening, right, people who are in the street to some capacity, whether it's a guy in the street or a girl, like whatever, what's the one thing, if they just had to start with just one thing, what would that one thing be to help them to get out and to turn their lives around?
Yeah, if I'm talking to street people, find good, positive mentors, because the mentor that you have in the street, it might not be it. Mm-hmm. That's what's keeping you in the street. There's a lot of what they call OGs, right? Original gangsters that, you know, they're doing time in prison, or they're still out in the streets having other people do shit that they wouldn't do themselves. So if you're there doing stuff that somebody else wouldn't do, I mean, what do you really do? Like, get focused, go find positive mentorship, you know, invest into programs, man. Like, there's programs that you can pay $40 to learn a whole plethora of stuff. YouTube is free. You can get on and start, you know, YouTube and Googling stuff, but just get out of your own shit, basically. You know what I'm saying? There's a saying, like, it's hard, like, you can't spend time explaining to a fly that honey tastes better than shit. Because you got bees that are getting honey, and then you got flies that are still flying around shit. Right. So at the end of the day, you got to make that. You got to make that decision. Stop being stubborn, man. Yeah, get to where the honey is.
Stop being stubborn.
Stop being fucked up in your own shit.
Basically, it starts with you.
Yeah, exactly.
It ain't everybody else.
100%.
It's you. You got to make a choice. Make it the decision, like you said.
Yes, man.
Well, I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
I definitely want you to come back and do a panel.
I would love to.
And how do people get a hold of you if people want to get into these programs? Sure. When will those programs be launched and available, and how can they reach you?
Yeah, they're, the Millionaire Real Estate Program, Hustler's Guide, will be launched end of the month. Okay. The Rich Off Royalties will be launched mid-February.
Very cool. Congratulations to those programs.
They can hit me up on IG, at Cash Franklin V2, just because my at Cash Franklin was banned.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, we won't get into that one. But,
and I'll have all the information for him in the bio below. So if you want to get a hold of him for one of these programs, I highly recommend it.
I encourage it.
I'll be signing up, picking your brain, because that's my next.
We have to do more deals together this year.
Yes, we do. Absolutely, sure. I'm holding you to that. By the way, we got it on camera.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for watching another episode of the Lorraine Lindsey Podcast. And until next time, ciao.
Peace.